How is this worldly life a prison for the believer? I think whoever came up with the question hasn't lived for long. الدنيا سجن المؤمن وجنة الكافر. Right? Or it could be the other way around in the Arabic. The Prophet told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the dunya, this life, is a prison for the believer. And what happens in prison? You're incarcerated. You don't have the freedom to walk about and do this, that. You know, you have a set routine. They have to eat at certain times and go lights out at certain times. So the dunya is not a place of absolute freedom for the believer. We have rules we adhere to, and the blessing actually in this is that everything we're told to do is actually what's good for us, because those who don't adhere to those rules, I was reading something not long ago, just a study on suicide. And suicide is a complicated topic, and you know, Allah protect us. You know, there are some very difficult situations Allah can put people in. But he had a look. He was analyzing the statistics in, I think, Europe or somewhere, maybe the US, about suicide amongst the people of the main three faiths, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, and atheism. And the atheists, those stats were really high. It was the lowest group was amongst the Muslims, and the highest group was amongst the atheists, because someone who doesn't have a purpose in life, and they may think they're very intelligent because they don't believe in God, and you know, we're not bound by this man-made religion. Religion is a man-made construct to control people, and or whatever kind of ideas they say. But it has a benefit for the soul. It has a benefit for the whole being of a human being, and we see there's a purpose to our existence, and we're not just, it's not just a rat race. Wake up, work all week, and then go out on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night and drink yourself, you know, into a stupor so you don't remember anything, and back to work on Monday morning all groggy with a headache, and the lights are too bright in here, and get me some coffee. We don't have that, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us purpose. So there are rules that a believer must adhere to in the dunya. And so that's one perspective, that there's no absolute freedom. As opposed to a disbeliever, what's stopping him? Okay, there's the rules of the country he lives in, and you know, you can't drive on the wrong side of the road, and you can't drive beyond this particular speed limit or whatever. And so he'll willingly follow those. But with regards to halal or haram, you know, if he wants, he can go eat, you know, he can go eat the flesh of a hippopotamus if he wants, right? Or, you know, a pig or a wild boar or any animal. He can drink any drink. There's there are no restrictions. So in that regard, but also in the regard, as I believe, was it Shaykh Ahmad al-Sawi, he narrates radiyallahu anhu ardah, he narrates an incident that happened to Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani radiyallahu anhu ardah, in which he was riding a horse, and he was a scholar, and scholars were looked after by the ruler in Egypt then, and he was dressed well on a horse, and a Jewish man came to him who he wasn't in a good state, right? And he said, I've heard that, you know, your religion says, or your prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this life is a prisoner for you believers, and a prison for you believers, and paradise for us. What kind of prison are you in? Because materially he was better off, and what kind of paradise am I in? So Sayyidina Ahmad ibn Hajar radiallahu anhu, you know, he reflected on this, and then he said, compared to what I've got coming in the next life, this is a prison, and compared to what you've got coming in the next life, this is a paradise. And then the person realized the truth of this, and he accepted Islam, not wanting, you know, the next life to be even worse than his current situation. So this is also another thing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, the words of Shaykh Ahmad ibn Ata'illah as-Sakandari radiallahu anhu come to mind, where he says that Allah has made the akhirah the place where he rewards his believing servants, because this world, this life just isn't big enough to contain what Allah wants to give. If you look at the last believer who comes out of paradise, the last believer who comes out of hell, and he gets his place in paradise, his own spot, his own area that's just his in paradise is 10 times the size of earth. So if Allah wanted to give that to a believer here, where would it be? Right? It won't 10 times the size of earth won't fit on earth. And that's just one individual. In fact, he's the lowest believer. And then what about everyone else? Not only that, the reward he wants to give them, Allah wants it to last forever. Right? So how is that going to fit into a life of 80 years or whatever it is? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the akhirah as a place where that reward is fully and properly manifested. So that's the real paradise. And this, in comparison, is like a prison. And yes, also another thing is that believers are tested, and it may seem, if you look in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, look at the Sahaba in Mecca went through immense difficulties, whilst the idolaters were not in such difficulty. Even in Medina, and yes, eventually they got the upper hand in Arabia, but there was intense periods of difficulty throughout the history of the Ummah up to this day, where there's a lot of tests and difficulties on the individual level. Why Allah tests people, he tests those he loves. So this is also an aspect of it, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes life difficult in order to raise people, to wipe away their sins and to reward them. And so this person can feel like, oh, it's difficult. It's like a prison. وحفت الجنة بالمكاره حفت النار بالشهوات وحفت الجنة بالمكاره. The hellfire is surrounded with pleasurable desires, and paradise is surrounded by difficulties. And that's where Allah's pleasure is manifested in its highest form. So we ask Allah to be pleased with us in every state. Ameen Ya Rabb.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله